All right, welcome back to the tutorial series. Today we are talking defense. So I have booted up a save with the Houston Astros. They are a decent ball club, so I will be showing you a little bit about how defense and defensive ratings work in out of the park baseball. So there's two sort of ratings at play in terms of defense, which is very interesting. So we're going to look at Marwin Gonzalez. He's a very interesting guy to look at because he can play so many positions. As you can see, he is rated in right field, left field, shortstop, third base, second base, and first base. And he plays all those. He's this super utility player in real life for Houston. He plays all over for them. So these are the positions that he's been playing in real life. If you can go and you can actually look at his defensive ratings, you'll see that they're separate from his position ratings. So he has an infield range and an infield error, infield arm, turn double play. These are all solid. If I go further into his ratings, I can also see that he has outfield ratings. So outfield range, outfield error, outfield arm. When you have a player like this who has, at least 50 in everything here, this is a guy who can play both in the infield and in the outfield. Most players can usually only play in one, so that's exciting for him. So one thing I would like to talk to you all about right now is what's called the defensive spectrum. And it's sort of originated by Bill James, who's a big who's kind of the godfather, I guess, of sabermetrics in baseball. And it's a spectrum of what positions from a defensive standpoint are easiest to play and what are the hardest to play. So the easiest positions to play, if I was going in order from easiest to hardest, the easiest would of course be designated hitter. Then after that, you would have first baseman. Then after that, you would have left field. Then after that, you would have right field. Then after that, you would have third baseman. Then after that, you would have center field. Then after that, you would have second baseman. Then after that, you would have shortstop. Then after that, you would have catcher. And then after that, finally, you would have, of course, pitcher. So the idea that I'm trying to get across to you is that these positions should be valued very differently. So we're going to take a look at someone like Altuve right now, and what makes Altuve valuable is not just the fact that he can hit very well. He can hit extremely well. He's put up 149 OPS plus and 154 OPS plus the past 2 years. But beyond that, what he does offer is stellar enough second base. He's 55 rated, so about average. So what he plays is a premium position, and the premium positions would be positions like center field, like second base, like shortstop, like catcher, and of course pitcher as well. The not so premium positions like first base and left field and right field, they come with higher offensive expectations. Okay, these guys that play these positions are generally going to be very big hitters. They're going to hit a lot of home runs. They might not be the fastest or the most agile, and that's sort of the trade-off. They're usually big-bodied kind of guys. There are some defensive specialists in those positions. Mookie Betts and Jason Hayward would be two good examples of guys who are really well-rounded and who really take pride in their defense at those positions. But for the most part, when you think of a defensive star, it's going to be a center fielder. It's going to be a middle infielder. So what makes Altuve special is the fact that he not only plays a premium position, but he also hits well, and that's hard to come by. And in terms of wins above replacement, that's going to make you extremely valuable. Wins above replacement has sort of weightings that are weighted actually based on what positions you've been playing. So an average first baseman who has a 120 OPS plus is probably going to put up somewhere around maybe 2.5 wins a season. But an average second baseman who puts up about 120 OPS plus, if you look at Altuve's 2015, he could easily put up like 4.5 wins a season. So that's a huge difference at play there, and it's important to sort of understand from a baseball perspective. This is why someone like Mike Trout is considered to be the best in the game, because not only is he the best hitter in all of baseball, but he also plays like a very valuable position in the form of him playing center field. Now, of course, there's the question of how well can you play those positions, and we're going to sort of look at Marwin again. So we've talked about how there are defensive ratings. So what makes Marwin cut out to play all these positions is the well-rounded nature of all these ratings. You will see, as a prototypical second baseman might have good infield range, but maybe not the strongest arm. So he's better as a second baseman because that 55 arm it's all right, but it really is just not like special, and then someone who plays in center field, well, they're going to have a lot of outfield range too. And then when you think about positions that would require a big arm, that's going to be positions like right field and third base. So I can honestly click on any player in the game and I can tell you, oh, is this the right position for them? And one that I would like to look at right now is Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is he's a bat first prospect, I would say, meaning that his hitting kind of outweighs what he does defensively. He's a big time prospect in the Astros organization right now. He starts the season with AAA in game. I don't know if that's true in real life as well. Anyways, Kyle Tucker has come through the minor league system as a center fielder. He's currently listed as a right fielder, but he has come through and he's played a fair bit of center field in his day through the minor league system. So I'll actually swap him to center field. Now, his range, his air, and his arm, they aren't quite good enough. This is an average of all sort of major league outfielders, and the truth is there are many guys who play in the corner outfield positions like left field and right field who just aren't cut out to play center field, at least not on a regular basis. So if you see someone with these kind of ratings, this 55, 55, 55, they're going to be a corner outfielder type. They're going to play left or they're going to play right. If there's something like 65, 55, 55, then okay, now we're talking. And if there's something like 70, 50, 50, then that's even better, because it's really range is super key for a center fielder, and you can imagine that if you've ever watched baseball before. So we look at Kyle Tucker's ratings, and these position ratings, they don't necessarily reflect exactly how good he could theoretically play each position, because what position ratings are based off of are not just defensive ratings, but experience. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open up the editor, which you can only do in commish mode, but it's important to help you understand this concept. So Kyle Tucker, as I said, has played a fair bit of center field, and you can see he has experience ratings for every position. And as you play games at a position, you gain experience, and that is sort of how you can grow your position rating, and that works in conjunction with your defensive ratings. So Kyle Tucker, on a scale of 0 to 200 in terms of his experience, he's actually at 200 for center field. He's at 150 for right field and 100 for left field. Now, for me, I'm looking at Tucker right now. He doesn't have the massive arm. He's 55, so he's certainly not bad. He could play right field fine, but I see him probably best suited as a left fielder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set his position to a left fielder, and you can see his rating as a left fielder is 1 star with actually 5-star potential. But when you go and look at him as a left fielder, you will see that he only has 100 experience. That's because although he's certainly played some left field during his time in the minors, it hasn't really been his primary position, so to speak. So actually, let's just say if I were to go ahead and make his experience 200, this would be, so to say, that if he had, came through and played a lot of left field during his time in the minors, we've now maxed out his experience. And what's going to happen is his ratings are going to reflect that. You can now see that he's a 60 in left field. Okay, he's moved from a 40 to a 60, and that's not based off of any improvement on his defense. That's based off of his experience at the position. So you can see he's now 1.5 stars already, and that makes a big difference in his overall rating because he can now play the position quite solidly. When we go back to Marwin Gonzalez, and we open the editor, we can see that he's got a lot of experience at these many positions. His first base, he's most experienced, and but he's still up over 100 for all of these, for pretty much every position besides pitcher, catcher, and center field. So if I wanted to bump up his right field his right field experience, I would play him in right field more. I think that goes without saying. So if I'm looking at Marwin right now, he has sort of similar outfield stats to Tucker, but he does also have these infield stats. So if I wanted to go to the editor right now, I could bump up his left field experience to 200 as well. and I would do that by playing him in left field in the game. So as you can see, his left field position rating is 40. But if I go and bump him up from 120 experience to 200, he now becomes 55 at left field, which is very solid. So you can see that experience plays just as much of the role as the actual ratings that are present in terms of their defensive abilities, as far as their infield range and their outfield range and their error and their arm and all that fun stuff. I will show you guys a catcher real quick, because catchers use their own set of ratings that are different. You can see that Brian McCann, he has, middling sort of infield ratings, I guess. You could play him at, he would be a bad first baseman, but you could play him at first base to some extent. I'll actually go into the editor, and I'm going to crank up his first base experience. He's only at 25. If I put him at 200, what would his rating be at first base? Okay, he could be a 50 first baseman. Anyways, with McCann being a primary catcher, he has catcher ability and catcher arm. And what catcher ability takes into account are things like preventing passed balls and wild pitches, as well as a framing element. So if you are, trying to maybe rebuild a team or find a good catcher, I would say really concentrate on those defensive ratings. Brian McCann is a really good hitter for a catcher, but 60 and 55 is also, good enough defensively. But sometimes you can find these defensive wizard catchers, and they might put up, 70 OPS plus. But if they have really high catcher ability, really high catcher arm, not only are they going to be able to do things like throw out base runners, they are going to, directly help your entire pitching staff. So when I go after catchers in free agency and in trades, they're always going to be very solid defensive catchers, and they're going to have ratings that reflect that. So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to sim through the year, because we can talk about defensive statistics at the end of it. You can see there's a section for fielding stats here. The previous ones, the ones that have actually been achieved in real life, don't come with, but the game will start keeping track as you sim through. So I'm going to sim through this year. I'm going to look at some players on the Astros. I'm going to look at some players who probably aren't on the Astros, and we're going to talk about what effect those defensive statistics have had on their wins above replacement, which we have talked about in another video. If you want to learn some about wins above replacement, there is I believe it's called batter ratings or something like that. It's one of the first tutorials in the series. So I would just check out the playlist on my channel, and you can find that video. But we're just going to go into depth once we get through the season on the defensive component of such a thing. I will sort of provide one more little experiment for you guys. Now, George Springer is a 55 rated center fielder. If you go into the editor, you can see that he is maxed out on experience there. That makes sense. He plays center field all the time. He is the Astros center fielder. Marisnik plays there sometimes too, but he really spends his days there, and also in right field as well. What I'm going to do with him as a little kind of experiment is I'm going to reset his experience at center field to 0. And he will be able to accrue, I would imagine, probably all of that back, or at least close to it. No, I'm not going to give him 0. I'll give him like 20. That's a little more nicer. And what's going to happen is I'm going to make sure his game strategy is set so that the Astros will still use him in center field. Is there a way I can do that? Yes, sorry, it's right here. So I'm going to force him to be used as a center fielder, even though the computer will look at it and say, hey, I want to use him as a right fielder. He's 55 rated there. He's only 25 as a center fielder. So what I've done is I haven't changed anything about his ability to play defense. I've just changed his experience. And we're going to see what kind of effect that lack of experience has. Now, at the end of the year, I imagine he'll be able to get up to 55, or at least very close to it, as his experience will go up, as he will be forced to play center field. All right, now we are actually ready to send through the year. All right, we are back, and it's time to talk defensive stats. Now, there's a lot of them available. You might be familiar with something like fielding percentage, which simply shows you, the rate at which your player makes the play correctly rather than making an error. But what I'm going to introduce to you all now, if you're not familiar, is probably a better defensive stat, and that's called zone rating. And it just kind of gives you an overall look at your player's sort of ability to cover ground and make plays in comparison to the average players at their position. Now, the normal range for zone rating is usually guys won't go beyond like -10, -10, -15 would probably be at the worst you could do, but usually about -10. And then on the plus side of things, usually guys will usually top out around, +10, maybe, +15, 0 being the average for their position. So we've got to look at these guys. We can look at their zone ratings. We can look at their OPS pluses, which can give us just a general idea of how well they spent the year hitting. And then we have their wins above replacement, which is sort of the catch-all stat, and we'll see sort of the effect that these have in conjunction with what positions they've been playing. So before that, I would like to show you guys Marwin Gonzalez. You'll see that his ratings at every position except first base have kind of been a little bit on decline over the course of the season. If you look at the editor, you can see that his experience is down on some of these positions, at least just a little bit down. And if you look at his fielding stats, very quickly you can see that this is because he was primarily used as a first baseman. He only played a couple games at any other position. It would take him a few more years to kind of completely forget how to play these positions, but his experience would continue to go down if he only continues to play first base. But let's get to zone rating. So here's a superhuman player. Andrelton Simmons is probably the best defensive player of his generation. He's, in my opinion, the best defensive shortstop since Ozzie Smith. And the season he's just put together from a zone rating of +25 is it's literally off the charts. It's inhuman. And he did so while playing shortstop, a premium position. His OPS plus was 71, which is bad. He hit badly, but his wins above replacement still ends up being 4, which is all-star caliber. So, and that's a guy who's he's just done it with his glove alone, which is absolutely amazing. So, to see a more human defender, that's still good. I want to look at J.P. Crawford, the Phillies rookie. He had a 3.4 WAR season. His zone rating was 6.5, and his OPS plus was 86, so he was still a below-average hitter by league standards, and yet was still able to put up an above-average wins above replacement. The average wins above replacement for starters is about 1.7. And we're going to compare that to Brandon Belt. Brandon Belt had a zone rating very similar, and Brandon Belt was a much better hitter, 105 OPS plus. But Brandon Belt only ends with 2.2 wins above replacement. What gives? He played better defense and he hit better. Well, Brandon Belt plays first base. And Brandon Belt is probably the best defensive first baseman in real life. This is a season where I would expect for him to win Gold Glove at the end of the year. But unfortunately, the difference between the value of a above average shortstop and above average first baseman in terms of defense is large enough that Crawford was still sort of viewed as the more valuable player over the course of the year. We're going to look at 2 catchers right now. One of them is Austin Hedges, a defensive wizard. Similar situation to Simmons right here. 75 OPS plus over the course of 131 games, but was still able to accrue 1.5 wins above replacement because he's a very good defensive catcher. It's not as exaggerated as Simmons, but Simmons was so sort of a superhuman season. Luke Roy, another guy, you can see he was a below-average catcher from a defensive standpoint, but he still hit well, 104 OPS plus, that's just above average. And because of this, he was able to accrue 2.7 wins above replacement. So even though his hitting was about average, his defense was below average, his wins above replacement were still above average, and that's because he plays catcher, which is pretty much at the tail end of that defensive spectrum. Springer, who I'll show you guys, he had a below average defensive season, and normally you expect for him to be about average. but his zone rating was negative 5.5, and that's because we fucked with his experience, and that messed up with his position ratings, so he had to essentially relearn center field over the course of the year, and he was able to, because we forced center field upon him, and he played 159 games there. So he was able to get back into center field form, but it hurt his defensive stats, and he ended up with 4.1 wins above replacement, 123 OPS plus. If he had played maybe an average, slightly above average defense, I would guess, and I'm just hazarding a guess right here, that he would be, a 5-win player, if not higher. So you can see sort of the effect that, it's very important that they not only have the defensive ratings, but they also have the experience to play the position. So that's why it's good to sort of, if you want a player to learn a new position, you can use game strategy, or, if you want them to learn maybe during spring training, set them in the lineup at that position, and they will learn that position over the course of spring training, and they'll be, more prepared to play it at a big league level. Because ultimately, you can really only learn by playing it. 2 more players I'm going to show you before I wrap up this video. Adam Eaton and Kyle Schwarber. They play left field. These are not defensively impressive positions. Adam Eaton, 121 OPS plus. Kyle Schwarber, 115 OPS plus. Similar amount of games, but the difference being that Adam Eaton played a very nice left field with his 5.8 zone rating, and Kyle Schwarber played a bad left field with his negative 5.6 zone rating. And you can kind of see that from his defensive ratings. They aren't very good, and so that stat is a reflection of that. And then when you look at Eaton, he is quite good. He could play center field well if he wanted to. But he spent most of the year playing left field. He played 105 games at left field, 38 at center as well. He was middling at center field, but was quite good in left field. And so what effect that has, even though they were relatively similar hitters, is that Eaton ends with 4.7 wins above replacement, and Schwarber only ends with 2. So Schwarber hits well enough that he's still sort of a productive enough player in the league, but Adam Eaton, a fantastic year for him, much better than Kyle Schwarber when you look at all that he's done. And that's why defense is important. It can make a big difference in how well a player is valued because, you look at Eaton, you look at Schwarber, and if you eyeballed their numbers, you would say, well, they're not that different because look at their batting statistics. These guys are pretty close in terms of talent. But when you look at that wins above replacement, when you take defense into account, it's just quite frankly not true. And Eaton's done a much better job this year than Schwarber when it comes to all facets of the game, and that includes defense. So to sum up, defense is important. Defensive ratings are important to help understand what positions each player will excel at, but they also need experience at those positions in order to play them well. But we also talked about zone rating. So I hope this was a useful tutorial today. I tried to simplify things down, but you can now see the effect that defense has both in game and why it's important to pay attention to the defensive ratings of your players. Now, one thing I will say about zone rating before I leave is that defensive statistics as a whole, they aren't as quite advanced as offensive ones. So I can take a look at a player's OPS plus, and I can have a pretty good idea of how productive of a hitter they are. I might not know exactly how they got to that level. They could be very good at getting on base. They could hit a lot of home runs. There's stylistically things that could be different there. But I can have a good idea, okay, George Springer, 123 OPS plus, he's certainly an above average hitter. Luke Roy, 104 OPS plus, he's about average. Andrelton Simmons, 71, he's certainly below average. You can eyeball it like that. Zone rating is, on a year-to-year basis, it's harder to trust. It's something that at this point you can really only be confident in on a 2 to 3 year sample. And this is advice for you in real life. So pay attention to your players' zone rating at various positions, but I would also mostly recommend that you go off these defensive ratings and position ratings. That would take priority over zone rating for me, and that's how I play the game personally. I don't look at the zone rating that much, but it is important to understand zone rating because of how it factors into things like wins above replacement. And I look at wins above replacement a lot, so that's why it's important that I still know my defensive spectrum. I know what positions are easy, what positions are hard, and things like that. So that concludes the video. Hope it was useful. If you have any questions, I'm sure you guys might. I tried to cover it best I could, but this is something I don't think about all the time in game. I just go off my ratings and I just kind of know. It's second nature to me. So I hope it was useful, and yeah, as always, feel free to leave a comment, ask a question, and hope you guys are enjoying the series. If you guys are just following the tutorial series, I will take the time to pitch the fact that I have begun my Let's Play now, and I'm a few episodes in, so you can find that playlist on my channel. Be sure to check that out. All right, thank you guys. Peace.